Without a doubt, my two favorite expat destinations in Thailand are Chiang Mai and Koh Phangan. So I'm going to talk about the differences and pros and cons of both of them and compare them a little. Let's go. Hey folks, this is Rising Nomad and this is Erik coming to you from Koh Phangan. And today I'm going to compare Koh Phangan with Chiang Mai, two of the best places in Thailand for me personally and for a lot of expats. And you might be wondering which should you move to and which should you stay in which month of the year. So I'm going to explain that a little bit. First of all, in planning your trips, I will say that October and November are rainy season in Koh Phangan, parts of December too, I think. I haven't actually ever been here for that time, but I hear it rains a lot. I've had a couple times when it rained a lot in April, for example, and they said this is what rainy season is like, but this is unheard of for April. This happened this year in 2022, also in 2020. Everyone was like, I don't believe it, it's raining this much in April, this is rainy season weather. Anyways, basically, yeah, there's rainy season here during that month, and the big stinker, smoky season in Chiang Mai. Hey dog. Look, we got some dogs over here coming to greet me in such a polite fashion. All right, so the big stinker is smoky season in Chiang Mai. It's when the air, like the farmers burn their fields in Thailand and the neighboring countries, and it just sucks, folks. So that happens from around the end of January until sometime in April, after Songkran, the Thai New Year. And you probably, like a lot of other foreigners, will not enjoy being there as much. So I'll say that if you want to mix the two destinations, if you want to spend like October, November, December in Chiang Mai, and then January, February, March in Koh Phangan, that might just be the best balance. That might be the best thing you can do for the ideal lifestyle, taking advantage of the high season both places. So that's a major thing that you have to consider when starting. But if you want to pick one or the other, you should choose wisely based on what your needs are. If you want to be in a place that's urban, where basically there's like walkability, like I'm walking right now, but it's not really walkable here in Koh Phangan. You can live in like places like Thong Sala and Had Rin where it is walkable. And well, there's always some sort of noise, isn't there, folks? Today it's these crickets or whatever they are. I'm gonna turn back this way. But yeah, if you're used to living in a city and you're used to being like able to walk to the supermarket, for example, you're unlikely to get that sort of vibe in Koh Phangan. The supermarkets are in like Ban Thai mostly, and you have to have a motorbike or at least a bicycle to get there in most cases, or be willing to walk for hours, essentially. Lots of people in Koh Phangan live in places that are way the hell out there. And you can kind of understand why they would do that, because look at this lovely nature. But if you want a city vibe, that's Chiang Mai. And basically Chiang Mai is a really nice place to live in a city. It's like 2 million people or whatever the population is, but it has like this walkability of places, other places I like Medellin, Colombia, and Belgrade, Serbia, expat places where you can just walk to most of the places you want to go and live life mostly as a pedestrian, not have a car, not have a bicycle, not have a motorbike, take the odd taxi somewhere, especially in the evenings and stuff. But yeah, Chiang Mai is the urban walking zone. Most expats live in like Sentitam or Niman area, depending on their taste. And then the old city on the east side basically is where all the tourists used to go, but now after Corona, there's not much going on there. I went there a couple weeks ago, and my favorite sort of street food area, food truck park was completely shut down, and it looked like it had been shut down for years. So basically, I think that it's clear that if you want to, live in the city, you should choose Chiang Mai. Now I'm going to talk about the local community. So the local community of Thai people is very different in Chiang Mai versus Koh Phangan. In Chiang Mai, you have it's a vibrant university city, a center of arts and culture, and there's lots of historical Thai stuff, lots of monasteries, Buddhist temples, all that sort of stuff. And you have everything you would find in a normal city, and lots of different, you've got normal working class Thai people, you've got middle class Thai people in the university running their businesses, and then you've got, wealthy Thai people, of course, but they mostly live in Bangkok apparently. Here on the island, most of the Thai people are just normal, rural, sort of island folk that live here. So you're probably gonna, if you want to get to know Thai culture, Thai language, Thai society, you're gonna get much, much more of that in Chiang Mai. The people in both places are really friendly, I find. But here, it tends to be most of the locals live off of catering to expats in a lot of cases, and you can expect that sort of transactional relationship. They're smiling, they're happy to serve you, but you're kind of living in a society that you as a foreigner are perpetuating in a lot of cases with most of the people you're dealing with, whereas and you won't really find that many bars full of Thai people being Thai. I mean, they do exist, of course, but overall, you're going to be in a gringo bubble or a Farang bubble, and you have to decide whether you're okay with that. So if you want more local interaction to learn the language, practice, get to know people who are of similar social backgrounds than you in the Thai society, definitely check out the Chiang Mai. Next thing I'm going to talk about is the scenes of expats. I would say that here in Koh Phangan, you've got a lot more sort of health conscious and alternative culture type of foreigners. And the community is really great. For me personally, I really love those scenes of yoga, fitness, alternative music, electronic music. Just this counterculture thing is much stronger here. You have it in Chiang Mai, but the one that you're used to finding in the West, I guess would be much more prevalent here in Koh Phangan, and you basically have a much more, I think, social scene of foreigners here, where everybody wants to know each other, everybody wants to go to events and all this stuff. Whereas I feel in Chiang Mai, the scene is, it's really easy to meet foreigners at events, but you're not going to run into them in the same way. There's not so much of a dominant foreigner vibe in Chiang Mai as there is here, because you got much more Thai different scenes going on that you're in the middle of. Whereas here, foreigners basically, they kind of dominate the types of scenes that you'll end up in a foreigner. So as a foreigner, which is very good. I came here because I'm looking for a society that I want to live in as a foreigner, exploring new ideas that, taking the Western society further and making sort of a satellite society that builds on a lot of the failures of Western society. And that's what I'm into personally, with my personality, my cultural and business interests. And this is a much better place for that, in my opinion. In Chiang Mai, I noticed that the foreigners were a lot more American. So there's a lot more Americans there. There's a lot, whereas Koh Phangan is a lot more European. Different people, different ethnic groups. No one ethnic group dominates. So lots of Russians, lots of Germans, French people, and people from all over the world as well, including Americans, Canadians. Me personally, being someone from Canada who moved to Europe and then to Thailand, wanting to, get closer to the nuances of culture, I prefer the European crowd of foreigners to the Americans. The Americans tend to come abroad with very set ideas that were formed in America, and they're less likely to have as much of a idea of exploring other cultures and other languages in the same way that a lot of Europeans do. you can argue about this in the comments if you want, but ultimately I find the European crowd to be a lot more laid back and open-minded in most cases, and that's one of the main reasons I like the gringo scene here in Koh Phangan a lot better. In terms of cost of living, I would say that if you're on a budget, Chiang Mai is a lot better, especially since a lot of the establishments you can go to are a lot more catered towards basically like locals in Chiang Mai and foreigners in Koh Phangan. Like if you go to the Pantip market in Thong Salan in Koh Phangan, you're gonna see almost no foreigners there as customers. No Thais, actually, I mean to say. No Thais there as customers. Whereas if you go to Chiang Mai, like you can sit down in a lot of places that are very cool, very trendy, and there will be no foreigners there, especially after the pandemic. Life went on in Chiang Mai, but a lot of the foreigners did not come back. So again, if you want Thai prices, or at least the possibility of finding them, Chiang Mai is better. Accommodation is cheaper, street food is cheaper, beer is cheaper. Pretty much everything's going to be cheaper, folks, in Chiang Mai. Since it's walkable, you won't have to have the expense of a motorbike, so on and so forth. So if you're on a budget, check out Chiang Mai first. And overall, I would say that in the end, to sum up this video, Chiang Mai is a much more plug-and-play destination where you're going to have a great experience in a city if you're used to living in a city with a lot of the conveniences that you're used to, like shopping malls and movie theaters and whatever else. I suppose it's all there. Whereas here you largely do not have those things. So it's much more of a wild, rural way of life you have to get used to. Whereas in Chiang Mai, you can just be like, you can just plug and play. You're in a city, you got your Starbucks, all that sort of stuff, modern this and modern that. The only thing in Chiang Mai that doesn't have that a lot of people would want, and that's good in Bangkok, is like, oh, these guys again. Yeah, the rapid transport system in Bangkok. You have nothing like that in Chiang Mai, or nothing like that on the island of Koh Phangan. So if you want like super mega modern conveniences, you move to Bangkok. If you want a cultural experience, you move to Chiang Mai. If you're willing to try something a little bit different, a different way of life, be closer to nature, you move to Koh Phangan. I think, I know it's a little strange to add the third one in the later stage of this video, but for me it was never a question of whether I wanted to live in Bangkok. I don't want to live in Bangkok. The place is just a bit too much and a bit too like flashy and trying to be like a modern Western place, whereas Chiang Mai and Koh Phangan offer cultural experiences where you can really grow as a human being. It's just living in Chiang Mai, you're having a much more authentically Thai cultural experience. And here, Koh Phangan, you're gonna have a much more authentically nature-oriented experience. So you guys decide what works for you. If there's stuff that I've missed in this video, write in the comments, let me know. Which do you prefer and why? What are your experiences living in both? And I'm leaving the island soon, but I'm gonna be back in October 2022. So I'll be around if you guys are gonna be around. Also, I'm always up to meeting people who are fans of my YouTube channels and stuff like that. So write me a message, and you can join our Facebook group community. The link is down below. Thanks a lot, Rising Nomad, checking out, and thanks for watching.